nothing. And he was like, well, this lady called and said that she thought that something dangerous was happening. I said, I've been smiling and laughing this entire time. I was like, what do you mean? And he was just like, well, sir, I'm just telling you what she told me. I was just like, okay, well.
So someone called the cops on you for being happy while Black?
Yeah, let's just call it that.
For grooving while Black, outdoors and in public so everybody can see your joy? Shame on you. Shame on you. Troubles are brewing.
Trouble.
Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. I'm your host, Robin Shine. I am delighted to bring to you brothers from across the United States and from various professions talking about their life experiences, their wisdom, and a conversation that also touches on racial profiling in the United States, how pervasive it is, what the impact is. And remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. If this is your first time listening to a 365 Brothers episode, make sure you subscribe because you do not want to miss one brother's wisdom, one brother's experience, and their perspective on life in the United States.
Today, we are speaking with a gentleman who's from Oklahoma City. He's traveled all around, currently in Oklahoma City again, and he's an entrepreneur and entertainer, does some public speaking. We are speaking with Ewane Masango. Welcome, E.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we jump into the questions, is there anything that you'd like to share with the listeners to help them get to know you better?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say that I think I'm a family man more than anything, like most people, and a grateful and joyous person around most things.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. So, E, what is your favorite song or movie, either now or all time?
Most recently, I would say like We Are the World. And then as far as movie, I would say somewhere between like Lion King and Coming to America.
Okay. Well, tell me about We Are the World. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they first made that song. I mean, that that was the first of what is now really a genre of charitable collaborations for global causes. But I can still see Lionel Richie and Dionne Warwick. What has that be a favorite right now for you?
Well, I've seen someone transform after listening to that song. They weren't necessarily from the Black culture, and I played it for them. This was probably around New Year's, and they were like overcome with energy. Like it was absolutely amazing to watch and see someone just like hear a song and be like, wait a second, there's something deeper about this. I guess you just never come across such a concept before. So
It sounds like it was transformative for them.
Yeah, it was very transformative. It's like, after that moment happened, I could see that there was a willingness that he was going to have to go after everything that he believed in, no matter if people would judge or feel some type of way about it.
Right. So your name and then the fact that you mentioned that your two favorite movies, you said somewhere between Lion King and Coming to America. Are you more directly connected to the motherland than some of us? Because I know I'm back, all kind of generations here in the U.S., but with your name and those two movies, I have to ask, do you have a more recent connection to the motherland?
That's actually a really interesting way that's actually wild. I never looked at it that way, but yeah, I definitely do. Yeah. So my last name comes from like Central West Africa, Cameroon specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it comes from Cameroon specifically, but like from a tribe within Cameroon. So,
okay.
So I've definitely had that connection most of my life and not really thought about how it affected my movies and show and a song until you just said that. I didn't know, like, wow, like that's really kind of funny. I never realized that before, but yeah, I guess that is what happens in this life.
Sometimes someone else hearing it sees things that we don't. And I love when that happens for me. Now, you mentioned Cameroon. Is it a parent, grandparent? Who was most recently in Africa?
Kind of a village of people that raised me. But yeah, my parents.
Yeah, and were they from Cameroon?
Yeah, originally.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been there a few times. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've been to Egypt only. And there was supposed to be a trip to Ghana this summer with a bunch of my cousins. They don't know yet, but I'm not going. I was. They're going to find out on this podcast. Because I am going. I'm just not going this summer.
Right.
These variants and all this stuff. I got my vaccination and all that, but I love half marathons, and I'm not even comfortable yet doing, going to a half marathon.
Wow,
and
half marathon.
I walked them. I mean, it's still, look, let me not diminish. Like, I do walk those 13
don't, there ain't gonna be no diminishing around here.
Right. But I do want to note.
That's impressive.
But I do want to note so that nobody gets confused. I do not run. But anyway, so I don't even want to do that. And the thought of getting on a plane for all those hours right now, I can't, I'm not ready yet. But I will make my way there. So anyway, that's very cool. It's very cool. All right.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
So let me ask you about a favorite childhood memory. What's a favorite childhood memory for you, E?
Just to name one, I remember speaking to my father where he was just saying that people need to finish things fully before they're actually done. I just remember I would like to say that I'm finished with something when I haven't actually finished doing it yet. So it could be something like as simple as we're leaving for school and my shoes aren't on yet. And I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go. like something like that. It was really subtle, but I can see how it represented a lot more things. So I remember the day we were sitting outside. I think we were watering a garden and some plants, having a discussion, and that's when I was just kind of talking about different ideas, like I usually am. And he was just like, hey, it's not finished until, something's not finished until it's finished, basically. So I think that's just a great memory for me. And thank you for reminding me to think back about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about accomplishments. I asked this question in two parts. First, an accomplishment that means the most to you personally so far in your life. And then an accomplishment that is the one when others hear it, they tend to go, oh, or wow. So let's start with the first. Which accomplishment is the one that means the most to you personally, E?
From my perspective, the greatest accomplishment right now is to be alive, like joyful and grateful and continuing to be curious and ambitious about, where things are going. I think that that's been the most important thing that I've accomplished. And then in a more grounded sense, I would say winning public speaking competitions would be something that kind of came out of nowhere because I used to be more ridiculed for talking in class or just in anything, you're loud or you're this or that type of thing. So for me, it was a pretty deep wound there. So I felt like after coming out on a positive end in regards to this public speaking competition I went to in Norway.
You mentioned about being in school and being ridiculed and told you were loud. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So at that time I was in Oklahoma and I felt as though, for the most part, a lot of the things that I was being reprimanded for were more than what they really were. So it's like someone would be talking to me or something like that, and then I felt like I would get in trouble for it.
Like, put that on the court for us. What's an example? Because I can tell that there is at least one memory that actually stands out for you.
Okay, yeah, there's one that stands out. So one time I was in class and I was sitting there, and the teacher had said we were about to do something. I don't remember what it was, or we were just kind of in class. And I remember raising my hand, and the teacher, was like, "Okay, what do you need?" I said, "Well, I need to use the restroom." And she was like, "No, you can't use the restroom right now." I was like, "Okay." I've never heard that one before. And so then before you knew it, I'd asked again because it was starting to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And she still didn't let me go to the restroom. So at the end of the day, at like some point there was like a breaking point, and I just ended up peeing in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it was just like a lot of laughter. There was a lot of these other types of things like that. So I felt as though that moment and that situation was significant for that reason.
Got it. And so when you talk about winning this public speaking event, and thank you for sharing that, that winning this public speaking event in Norway and others that you've participated in, I don't know if this is how you would see it, but it sounds like in that moment as a kid, it might have seemed like your voice wasn't enough, or it you know what I mean? And like now to be acclaimed in public speaking and to do that it's like you have your voice and it's powerful.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it's like you said earlier about people being able to tell you something that you might not see it from that perspective. Thank you for that. That really was something that resonated with me.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you for being so generous and sharing, your story with us. And now I want to talk about the accomplishment that tends to get the or the wow from others.
A Disney song comes to mind, which is that Aladdin, A Whole New World. Like that.
Yes.
That song is how we've imagined the platforms that we're building, and just kind of imagine it that way. But on the foundations of it, it looks like apps, it looks like events.
And I get the broad strokes of what you're saying, but I don't know if my listeners are really clear on what they could do on this platform. So is this something kind of like a Craigslist or something like a Fiverr? A Fiverr is a place where you can, post what you're good at, like maybe graphic design or whatever, and then people can find you and you can trade or sell services. Is that it, or something different?
Right now, the current app is one that allows people to be able to take whatever business that they're doing online and then also have like healthcare and wellness attached to that, to where they're able to track and keep track of what's happening with their health and improve themselves. And then at the same time, we're doing community events where a lot of those people use the platform, and then they'll be doing things like we have a fashion show coming up. We have a couple fashion shows coming up, which source the fashion models from the communities they're living in. So we have a couple apps. One is the one I just described, and then the events coming up, which a lot of those will be live streamed so people can tune in.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. This sounds really cool. Bringing the community together to share and build. And, I'm sure you can tell by now, my mind don't do nothing but make connections all over the place.
Right.
But as I'm listening to you, so you being in Oklahoma, I happened to have a conversation with a person just the other day about Black Wall Street. And, just how, because Black Americans then were not allowed into certain businesses, into regular Wall Street, they were locked out of so many ways to build generational wealth. They created their own. Of course, then when they did it, other folks got angry and burned it down. But when you're talking about this platform, the fact that you're in Oklahoma, I see another mirror there. It's like, here's where they found the home that became Black Wall Street. And now it sounds like you're up to creating something where Blacks and people of color will be able to support one another and grow both generational wealth and generational health.
Like you said, you make great connections. Now that you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I guess that did shape. That's what I'm saying. Looking back on things is so funny, but yeah, I guess it did shake. It did change some things, because when I was out there, I interned there for. I was planning on going to law school at that time before doing entrepreneurship full time. And I had a frat brother that was out there that I got hooked up with, who had his own firm. Now, his name is Demario Solomon Simmons. He's been on huge cases for civil justice and all these types of things. But at the time, he was working out of a place in Tulsa. And so when I went there, I was able to connect with the community about community service events as an extension of the law firm as well during the internship. That allowed me to see much more about what that was about, look into the history. A lot of people don't know, even in Oklahoma, we didn't have that in our history books, right? Like they made you take Oklahoma history, but they didn't include that in it. Even in an updated version, they had like a line. This was during my lifetime. So they had like a line, and then I know a girl who complained about it in class. She's like, why is there only a line about this? And the person was just like, oh, that's the only thing that's important or something. There was just like this pushing away of wanting to discuss, something like that and what the ramifications of something like that could cause when you really think about it deeper. So I think that there probably is a huge Black Wall Street mentality that I might have embraced around that time.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's talk about words. What is a favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
It's from Tony Pritchett. It says, "Light thinks it travels faster than anything, but it is wrong. No matter how fast light travels, it finds the darkness has always got there first and is waiting for it."
I love that quote.
Yeah, that's how I feel about the women that raised me. I always felt like I was trying to run someplace, and then I got there, they'd be like, "Oh, well, you remember what I told you about?"
That's beautiful. That's got so many layers to it. If I've heard it before, it didn't sound as good as it does now. I have way more files, way more wisdom, I guess. And it's like, oh yeah, that's good. Is there a person, moment, conversation, or event that stands out either as changing the trajectory of your life or had a significant impact on your life?
Yeah, back when I was in middle school, the school was having a campaign for people to run for offices and things of this nature. And I remember being really excited about trying to run for president. And over the next few weeks, after people put their nominations in, I guess you got time to like practice and things of that nature. It could have been a few days. Kid time is different.
Yeah, right. I do. Yeah.
I don't think was thinking about things in weeks back then. Like it was just kind of like I'm at school or not at school, maybe on the weekends there's some stuff there. But yeah, so some time passed and, we're on the day of, and the night before I had just, I guess, been practicing the whole night. I kind of blocked it off for a while because I talked to my mom about it. She remembered it very vividly. But I was just kind of like, it was like I didn't remember the moment until I realized that it was more trauma attached to it. So like right after practicing and going through all that, the day of comes and we're sitting in the classroom and slowly one of the teachers or someone says something about how, we're getting ready that day to go through, this campaigning and all this type of stuff. And one of the teachers comes in and like calls me out of class, literally calls me out of class. So I was like, okay, I don't know what the heck is going on, but all right. And so I go outside, and two of the teachers are there. These two teachers I'd had before. And I came out of the classroom and I was talking to them, kind of like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on, but there was an energy that was kind of happening at the time. I couldn't really explain it. And then shortly afterwards, they start talking to me and they're kind of just making conversation. And then they're like, well, so we don't think it would be right for you to be able to run or represent the school in that way. Just kind of, out of nowhere. So then after that, I definitely felt as though there was a lot that it was just seemed like I was processing at the time, because people started going crazy at the school, and like people are like quitting and people are getting fired, and like parents are up there screaming. Like it was just like a whole bunch of it was like a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay, so hold on, because I'm trying to follow, but I don't know if I did. Are you saying, so was it, because you haven't said, why did they not think it was right for you to represent?
They didn't give any really good reasons. I mean, what they said was that, they thought that I had been horsing around too much or getting in trouble and things of this nature, which were all, like I said before, a kind of, like it was just like a perspective, right? Like it was like a perspective of what's going on, because, I wouldn't say that I actually got in trouble at all. We really up until that point. But yeah, so I think there was just a perspective that they had, and that's the decision that they made.
So in other words, you wanted to run for the equivalent of, student body president or class president. And then on the day of, after you put in the time to prep and do what it takes to run for that within the school, two adults pulled you aside and said that it wasn't going to be a good idea for you to do that.
That's exactly what happened.
Why was there so much turmoil? Was the turmoil that was happening at that time was it around that choice, or was there something else that was going on? Do you recall? You may not recall, because I know what it's like to be a kid and it's just adults having adult stuff going on. But do you have any recollection of what all that was about?
The environment, right? Like being in Oklahoma in the 90s at like a school that was primarily not people of color, pretty much by far. It was like, so I think that there was a lot of differences in perspective.
That's a really nice way of saying there was some difficult race relations going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I get the world of it. I'm sure the listener does too. And whether it was because of race or just perceptions or whatever it was, that has an impact. So anyway, I'm glad that you are able to share it with us.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you.
What is a moment or event that either highlights or in some way signifies your experience as a Black man in the United States?
I was on the road heading from Oklahoma to Texas, and I was in a rush. And I'm kind of like switching lanes and trying to, get there as quickly as possible, so that I'm not late to the airport. Then a cop that pulls me over, and when he pulled me over, I was like, okay, I'm in my own mind right now, so I was like, okay, no big deal. Let me just grab my license, registration. I'm gonna have to eat this ticket, and keep it moving. And the officer just came up like he was so upset, like he was very, very upset. Like I remember, I was just like, I don't understand. Like I see people speeding all the time. I don't know why he's like, he just started like screaming. He's like, what are you doing? And da da da. And what do you think? That all that. I was like, man, wow. Like I don't think that he probably talks to everybody like that. But but I would say that that's probably a moment that a lot of people could relate to in regards to that experience.
Right. Just kind of over the top. And I know exactly what you're talking about. There are certain interactions, even I know that you just shared one with police, but I find that in my own life, even sometimes interacting with someone who's, in some kind of customer service position, there can be a toot that they get that is one that you just kind of know is over the top and unnecessary. And I guess the word I'm not saying is demeaning, speaking down, a little condescending.
Right.
Yeah. So then the next question is the one where I ask about law enforcement. Is there any other experiences that you've had with law enforcement?
I've honestly had a number of them. One of the more recent ones, I was in California. I was definitely in the LA area. We had a house out there of entrepreneurs that were doing things like selling solar energy to people, or trying to get people to switch to solar panels on their roofs in California. And me and a couple of the people went to go get a haircut. This was right around maybe last March. And we were parked in the parking lot, and they were like only accepting one person in at a time to be safe. And so we're sitting in the car. That morning, a rapper named Joyner Lucas came out with a song called Will, which is like an ode to Will Smith. And like Fresh Prince was my show, like that. So when this video came out, I was like, oh man, this is like my song for the day. Right. Mm-hmm. This is like, I was just listening to it on repeat. And so then I started listening to the instrumental version so that I could freestyle over it. So I pull it up and I step out of the car and I start walking around the parking lot, listening to this beat. And because the beat is so good, I'm like grooving and dancing a little bit. And before you know it, these officers are like coming up to the car. They're like, hey, what are you up to? What are you doing? And I was just standing around over here like nothing. And he was like, well, this lady called and said that she thought that something dangerous was happening. I said, I've been smiling and laughing this entire time. I was like, what do you mean? And he was just like, well, sir, I'm just telling you what she told me.
Was your music so loud that it was disturbing the peace?
No, I had headphones on. I was just like, okay, well.
Okay, this is the first time. Okay, I got to just call this. So someone called the cops on you for being happy while Black?
Yeah, let's just call it that.
For grooving while Black, outdoors and in public so everybody can see your joy? Shame on you. Shame on you. Troubles are brewing.
Trouble. That's not supposed to be happening.
That's not what the heck. Oh man. Thank you for sharing that one. Wow. Any others you want to share? That was good. I mean, you're good.
Okay, I will say the one time I did have some help. I was headed back from Colorado, and I was in Colorado with two friends, and we were driving through Texas. And while we're driving through Texas, we got pulled over. And this guy was trying to search our car and do all kinds of stuff for whatever reason. And I was in the passenger seat. And I think me and him started having I tried to talk to him like a gentleman and be like, hey, sir, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. And he started noticing that the two other friends of mine were looking to me to try to see what we were going to say we were doing. Right. Mm-hmm. And he just fixed me in the back of the police car. He's like, okay, I can see y'all are doing something here. You right there. I need you in the back of the police car.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was like, I need you in the back of the police car. He's like, I need to talk to one of these. I was like, what? He's like, why does it even matter? And so I'm sitting in the back of the police car, and then they're thinking, I'm like, man, I don't know what is about to happen. It's like 4th of July. Like my family is waiting on me. I was like, this is kind of crazy. Like he was trying to figure out a way to get somebody to say something that would allow him to search the car and take us in.
Right. He thought he wanted to put the smart nigga in the back. Excuse me.
That's
I'm just saying, I had to say it like that because that's how it is. That's how he saw it.
Yeah, that's the way of looking at it for sure.
Mm-hmm. My mama want to slap me if she hear this. But I taught you better than to say that word. So there
was three of us in the car. One of my friends was active in the Air Force at that time, and not the main cop, but this other cop that was with him also was stationed at the same place. So they connected on that. And they're like, all right, so which just really begs the question of how much power people have that can be given or taken away from you based off of association.
Right. Okay. Got it. So really, just as it happens, because the other officer had a personal connection with one of the three of you, you guys didn't have to go through who knows what. We don't know what you were saved from, but you were certainly spared from something. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you were. Man, I all I can say is thank you for sharing both of those.
Thank you for asking them. It was very, very helpful to be able to look at those things.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm doing this podcast. It's good for me. It's good for the listeners. But honestly, I also love that it is of value to the guest. It's like there's no just you're showing up and then you're just giving it away. It's like, the intention is that you get something for yourself. I for sure get something just from the conversation, and that everybody is getting something that lifts them a little higher, if not in their mood, then in their understanding and knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. Well, here's one of my favorite questions. If the United States was a woman with whom you could speak, whether she's a mother, lover, stranger, neighbor, friend, you choose, what would you say to her?
I think that I would, or sing something like just not to be repetitive, but the "We Are the World" song, or subsequently, as well as "Heal the World" and some of these types of songs, is what I would sing to her. To urge to be more unified while also having people have their individual freedoms equally.
That's important to add, because we all have the freedom to drive down the road in our cars, but it's still not quite an equal freedom. And
right.
And we're getting there. And, it's been a couple weeks yet, since we've had the murder conviction for Derek Chauvin. And that is a beautiful step along a long path. It was a long, long road to that. And there's still some road to go. But I do love the two songs that you chose. One, they're so beautifully sung, but also it's both of them were done with the intention of being collaborative, bringing people together, but it's a blending. And something about the way that you also said we are unified, but we're still allowed to be our individual selves and have our unique flavors, because I do remember a time pre-algorithms running What I See, when we all read the same newspaper. You didn't get to pick and choose which of the articles on the front page showed up or how it sounded when it got to you. There was just one. I'm not going to say it was objective, but it was certainly more objective, and it led to us all having shared facts. And so you could have a conversation with people and you could have a different view or a different interpretation of the facts, right? And you could have a different solution for the facts that were presented, but you didn't argue over which facts.
Right.
And so there was just, and those songs came from a time where there was I'm going to say a shared reality.
Right.
Right? Oh, I can tell you got something to say about that. Go ahead.
Well, earlier when I was talking about the project that I'm growing called The Society, we actually talk about shared reality, or a social reality is what we've been calling it from a more technological standpoint for investors. But reality that's shared for sure, where people are basically rewarded for what they've contributed equally. but you can track some of those things now. So that's really, really exciting.
Fantastic. And I also enjoy hearing, maybe it's because of my particular bent on what I look at. A lot of what shows up in my feed around technology is some of the ways that AI is, dividing us, how it is, some of the past structural inequities are being replicated in some of the algorithms, things like that. And so I share that because I don't often hear or have show up in my feed the stories like yours of people using blockchain, internet, apps to bring people together. And I know that they're out there, but like I said, because I'm kind of keen on seeing, well, how's it being, how's it not working for us? I sometimes miss the stories of people who are doing things to have it work for us. So much so that I realize in talking to you that I actually am starting to lean toward viewing algorithms as a bad thing. And I also get that's not true. It's the particular areas how I see them being used that are, in my view, inappropriate or embedding inequity and divisiveness. But, I'm appreciating that having you share what you're doing with it reminds me not to get so stuck in what doesn't work. Can you imagine if all I could ever talk about is how terrible education was and what they don't do? And it's like, yeah, but there's some kids who learn stuff. Right. I mean, there's a lot to fix, but people do leave knowing their times tables. They can write a paragraph. They can read. Right. That's good, right? That's still good.
That's a great point, man. That's a great point, because I've definitely felt that way based off of those experiences about school before. But that perspective that you just gave is definitely transformative, because that's definitely, that's all kinds of foundational things that people use for the rest of their lives. You don't even remember when you learned it. Mm-hmm. You just know it was at school, but your teacher knew when you learned it. Your teacher knew what the lesson plan was and with this and that. So there's a lot of compassion there, which I think a lot of people may not see from that point or perspective as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and again, the beauty of a conversation, because you're also reminding me, because I see now that I have a similar view with government, like especially after these last several years. I had gotten to a point where I was like, it's so corrupt, it's ineffective, the two-party system, they don't work together, nothing's getting done. And, the reality is there's a lot to fix, just like there's a lot to fix with structural racism. There's a lot to fix with our schools. There's a lot to fix, but there's still value in acknowledging where they do make a difference, because as much as I can point to what isn't working in government, for example, I can say that I don't feel that I'm in any greater danger today than I was 10 years ago or 30 years ago. I feel protected from most terrorism. I'm not saying nothing could happen to me. I'm just saying that by and large, that is fairly effective. The people who don't have an income and qualify for Social Security, they're getting their checks. It's not like sometimes they get their check and sometimes they don't. So it is good. This conversation is a good reminder for me too, to acknowledge what's working without taking my eye off of the steps we can take to grow and transform. So, which is what you're all about.
Wonderful. Yes, that is what I'm all about.
What is love to you?
One of the most beautiful things about this question is because the story I'm about to tell it plays into what love means to me. So
sure.
Just the other day, I was in LA and I was shooting to promote the society and the rest of the projects that we're doing that like you said, have like blockchain and a lot of these other things involved in them. And we're at the Santa Monica Pier in West LA. And I remember we were standing at this sign that said something about Route 66, which also goes through Oklahoma. So I was having a kind of nostalgic moment looking at it. And then shortly afterwards, somebody walks up was like it was like a group of beautiful, Black women, and they were just like, "Oh man, you look so." I mean, they were a little bit older than me, but at least that's the way it seemed. So, but yeah, they were just, they were just like, "Oh man, you're so hot." It was like, "Who are you?" And da 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 da. Because there was a camera, there was somebody that was one of the people I was working with was shooting camera footage, and so I was like, okay, well, if this is what we're gonna do, right, then you two need to come and be part of the video, and so yeah, so we started talking and having a conversation. I was like, okay, so I want you to answer a question. I didn't have this planned at all. The only thing I ended up asking though was, what does love mean to you? Literally, there's like a whole 7, maybe 8 people we interviewed that day after that moment with that question. And so to hear the question from you is absolutely fascinating. And that's what I would say that love means to me. It's like this, you can't explain how that happened a few days ago. And then I see this question here today. To me anyway, because I know that I was just in love at the time that happened. That's why I asked the question to those people to kind of, Jedi mind trick them and kind of, get them to realize that it's not so complicated. Everybody had answers. It was so simple. Some people were like, "Oh, I don't want to answer that." And I'm like, "No, come on, just answer." And they're like, "Well, I mean, there's one guy who was like, well, I mean, it's compassionate, it's
I love your voicing it.
Yeah, because people were literally, dropping their shells because of the magnitude of the question, and then a camera being on them, so they would answer, and it was just great to get those answers. But yeah, for me, I would say that it's these just wonders that you can't really explain how these things would all align with one another. Just like me coming across you answering asking these questions, and us having this conversation. To me, seems so cool right now. It's like absolute perfect timing to discuss the things that you're asking, because it's good. It's healthy to be able to express those things and let it out, as opposed to holding it in, and then just like an engine or something, it starts building up and then it explodes.
You got me over here grinning because you have helped me identify a love language that is not in the oft-quoted love languages book. And that is wonder, awe, and magic. Some people call it coincidence. But, that thing that you point to that love is, when you first started talking, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think everyone listening gets this. I really do. It's those moments where you can't explain them. And if you're religious, you're probably going, "Oh, wow, God really did that." If you're not religious, you're saying, "Wow, look at that coincidence." But it goes a little bit beyond just, noticing the coincidence. I always feel like there are these moments when the universe stops to give me a kiss. And
yeah.
Right? And so that's the kind of love that I hear you referring to, those moments where you can't help but go, "Wow, wait a second. The universe conspiring for a little joy for me. I like it. Thank you."
I mean, all you gotta do is take one deep breath and be like, man, all the times that I've called someone and then say that they were just thinking about me, like, what world is that even possible in? Like, you're not really considering what that means. That means that how could they have been thinking about you while you're thinking about them? Like, what is that? How do you explain it?
Exactly. Little things like that. And and I just encourage everybody to just, don't just have those things happen and then just brush them off like, "Oh, well, yeah, that was just a coincidence." I mean, you can just say that's a coincidence, but that's like looking at a perfect cake and going, "That's a nice looking cake," versus, "Oh my gosh, that icing. Ooh, look at that. Oh, the way they did that. Now, isn't that more fun than just, it's a nice looking cake?" That's just me.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. That's definitely what it is.
Well, E, what is something you've learned through your profession, training, experiences, or adventures that you believe more Black men should know but don't, knowing that whatever you say benefits all of us? So What's that?
To go anyway. Go anyway. Right. So like in the moment, whenever you're questioning whether or not this thing is for you, and you're dealing with all these traumas, or we are dealing with all these traumas in regards to imposter syndrome or victimization or any of these things, to ask and receive. Ask for the courage to be able to just go anyway, and that along that path is where you find all these adventures and experiences and training and who you are.
Mm, mm. Very simple, very profound. Go anyway. I love it. Now I get to ask you, now that you've participated in this conversation, what did you get for yourself personally out of participating in this conversation?
Well, it was definitely therapy. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So as most people know that we're going to therapy, it's probably going to take me some time to process this and integrate everything, back to where I'm moving at full speed again, because this was good.
That's awesome. Awesome. And, being the troublemaker that I am, what is it? Because, I could leave it at that. Come on now. You've been with me for an hour.
Yes, we have. We're troublemakers together.
So just a few more words about that. What did you gain that you'll be chewing on for a while?
I would say it's the questions. I say that the questions are usually the answer. So you asking these particular questions in the sequence that you did shows me not only your education experience, as a teacher or a practitioner is what we call them in the medical world, but the people who are willing to go out and plant seeds into people. I think that the way that it was formatted and how it rolled out was my earliest thoughts are that it was transformative. So we'll see what happens with my life from here.
I have to acknowledge that really, I feel like the muses, gods, angels, my ancestors, I can't name them, but the questions, I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would type up a couple questions, and then I'd wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden I would try to be like, I'll do it in the morning, but it would be like, get up, change it. And so then I would go and I would tweak the question a little bit, then tweak it again. And so I will honestly say that I feel like the credit goes to whoever makes the phone ring right when you think about somebody. So as we conclude our conversation, I love to always just share what I got about the guest. And there's one word that I'm left with. Two words, powerful voice. And I'm torn between saying powerful voice and saying empowering voice, because I hear through so many of the things that you shared, so many of the different instances in your life that you shared, a lot of them, from my perspective, have to do with the power of voice. Even the officer who, had to separate you because he could see that your voice carried power inside that car. The power that those teachers saw that would be bestowed upon your voice if given that opportunity, which they, chose to yank away, but they yanked it away because they saw the power that would be then available. And so to hear that these experiences have happened and that what you're doing with your life is using your voice to empower others and allowing yourself to experience the power of your voice is awesome. That's it.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you. Very kind. You're a smart, I don't want to get in trouble for your mom, so I'm not going to say the second word, but
You right.
Remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. Lastly, I just want to let you know, producing a podcast, it takes something, and I'm really grateful to have partnered with alidu.com. They make publishing easy. There's a link in the show notes for anyone who either has a podcast or is thinking about a podcast. You don't need to learn all that sound balancing and compression. Save all that. Use your time for what matters, interviewing and sharing the stories that your podcast brings.
And so, now that people have had an opportunity to, discover who you are, how could they reach out to you? And I'll, of course, put this in the show notes.
So my email is going to be e@society.io. And my Instagram handle is @Ewane Masango. So EWANE MASANGO.
Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. Certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.